Hey guys, it's Kevin again. This is going to be my review for Gotham Season 1, Episode 3, The Balloonman. And this episode was ridiculous. I'm not gonna sugarcoat things here, guys. This episode was completely ridiculous. And that's mainly because of the case surrounding this episode. Whoever wrote this episode, what the fuck were you thinking with this case? Because, like, seriously. The case in this episode is so stupid. I'm going to talk about what it is. Other than the really stupid case, though, believe it or not, this was the best episode so far, in my opinion. Out of the three that have aired, this one I thought was the best written. This one I thought was very well written, in my opinion. I liked everything that was going on in the episode beside the case. The case was stupid, as I said, but, like, everything beside the case I really enjoyed. I think, they're really getting better and better every episode. I think Gotham is going to be one of those shows where it gets better and better and better every single episode. And you can definitely tell right now that it's probably going to be the case. So let's just get to this episode. So we see Oswald get off the bus, and he notices the crook cops, the purse snatchers, and the prostitutes, and figures that he's home. He thinks, he's back in, Gotham. So on the news, a reporter is outside of Arnold Dancer's penthouse, and Dancer is out on bail after biking investors out of millions. So inside, Dancer is telling his lawyer to pay off whoever it takes him to get off, and once he hangs up, he sneaks out to avoid the press. A man in a pink pig mask is selling balloons from a cart, and we get basically our big bad of this episode, which, as I said, he is completely ridiculous. He slaps a cuff on him, releases a weather balloon from among the other balloons, and the balloon pulls him up into the air screaming. The reporters hear him and film the incident. The balloon man tosses his mask away and blends into the crowd. Like, seriously, I am not kidding. The case in this episode is a guy who ties people to balloons, sends them up into the air until they're, like, dead. What the fuck? That is one of the weirdest things I've ever seen in my life. Like, seriously. And what's so stupid is they want you to take this so seriously, but I can't take this case seriously at all because of the way it was done. It was just like, I can't take a case about a man who was tying people to balloons seriously. Who could take that seriously? Like, seriously, it was ridiculous. So, Jim and Harvey are called in to check out the car, and Harvey figures that Arnold got what he deserved. But they don't have a body, and Harvey goes to get a Danish. And when they go back to the station, Lieutenant Bill Cranston notices Jim and introduces himself. He talks about roughing up suspects and shows Jim the award he got for years of services. And he explains that he used it for interrogation and goes to beat up on a suspect. So Jim goes over to his partner and admits that he hasn't been able to trace the car or pick up any fingerprints. And Harvey doesn't see a point in pursuing the investigation. At this point, I'm like, okay, this episode is completely ridiculous. That's what I was like at this point. At this point, I was like, okay, this episode is not good. It's completely ridiculous. I'm going to admit something, guys. At first, I hated this episode. The case I hated it at first. There were other things that happened, though, that made me like it more. So, basically, Jim handcuffs her to, basically, Harvey didn't see a point in pursuing the investigation, noting that two guys killed themselves when Arnold took their life savings. So Davis Lawman from Juvenile Services comes over with Kat and asks James to sign for custody. And James tells, Davis that her transfer is going to be delayed because she has information about a case. Now, I was very interested in seeing what's going to happen here, because, of course, the cliffhanger of last week's episode was that she has information about Bruce Wayne's parents' killer. She has information about it. So he's very determined to get this information out of her. He takes her to an alleyway and explains that he made a promise to Bruce to find the killer. So Kat describes the night of the shooting and where she was on a catwalk, and she says that the killer didn't have his mask on before he approached the Waynes. She got a glimpse of his face, and Jim points out that she doesn't have any proof that she was there, which she doesn't. So Kat tells him that she stole a wallet from a man 2 blocks over, and the detective admits that the man did report a thief matching her description. Selena shows him the manhole cover where she dumped the wallet, and Jim handcuffs her to the fire escape, and she doesn't get cut loose until he finds the murderer. So once she's secured, Jim opens the manhole cover, goes down. As soon as he's out of sight, Cat picks up the lock, and Jim turns up the wallet in the sewage, placing Cat at the scene. Cat tosses down his handcuffs and walks away. And then we don't see her for the rest of the episode. So, that was like a real tease, I gotta say. I was not a fan of that scene at all. That was a real tease there. But I like that it's kind of slow paced. Because honestly, Gotham was being way too fast paced. And I like that we're seeing that Cat is a very tricky force to be reckoned with, definitely. She definitely is a force to be reckoned with. You know, she definitely has her own agenda. And I gotta say, I know a lot of people don't like the actress that's playing Cat, but I think she's doing a really good job. I think she's very funny. I love the snarkiness of her. I just think she's a very good character overall, and I really enjoy her character, in my opinion. She's definitely one of my favorites. So, then we see Fish at her club, and Fish is telling the bruised, Laszlo to take a rest, and Renee and Chrysippus come in, and of course those are the two cops, and asks if she's seen Oswald around. And Fish says she hasn't, and wonders why MCU is looking for him, because she pretty much thinks that he's dead. You know, he pretty much thinks that. You know, pretty much everyone thinks that. So Renee figures that Oswald is dead, and Fish says that word has it that Jim pulled the trigger. And he suggests that they figure out who gave the order to Jim, and Renee figures that it was just Carmine. And Chrysippus says they've heard that Carmine ordered Laszlo's beating, but Fish insists that she just wants justice for Oswald. So, speaking of Oswald, he is counting what little money he has, takes out a knife, a street thug spots him, realizes who it is, figures that he can get a reward from Fish for turning him in. The thug drags Oswald into an alleyway, and Oswald says that he's Gotham's future. He stabs the thug in his leg, bringing him down, finishing him off, and Oswald takes his money, goes over to buy a sandwich from the food truck, and that was actually really funny. He's like, hey, can I have a sandwich? I thought that was really funny what he said. And I really like this next scene. This next scene really made me like the episode more than I already was, because at this point, I wasn't really liking the episode. I was like, yeah, I'm not really liking this episode. So, this is kind of what got me to like it more. We finally get to see Alfred and Bruce without Jim involved. Jim does not have to do with the Alfred and Bruce plot in this episode. So, Alfred is forcing, Bruce to fence, trying to cheer him up, and Bruce finally loses his temper and comes at him. It was a funny scene to watch, and he picks up the police files on the desk and realizes that they're the Waynes, and Bruce says that he's looking for clues, but admits he hasn't found anything yet. So basically, he's trying to be a detective here. So Alfred reminds him that Jim has promised to find the killer, and assures Bruce that the lieutenant will try, but Bruce wants to do a little detective work of his own, so I thought that was kind of interesting, that he wants to, some detective work and find out what's going on there. So I thought that scene was definitely really funny, not funny, but it was definitely very interesting, and kind of changed my opinion of the episode. So, at the station, Jim is cleaning up his shoes and calls juvenile services to explain that he won't be returning Cat. So I'm wondering what he's actually going to do with her, because we don't see her for the rest of the episode. And Renee and Crispus come in and accuse him of shooting Oswald on Carmine's orders. James tells them that it isn't true, and tells them to come back until they have proof, because it's not true. Him and Harvey were there, and Oswald came at him, and he didn't even kill him, so, eventually he's going to have to tell them that he didn't kill them, but he can't tell them yet. So, Oswald applies for a job in an Italian restaurant. The owner points out that he doesn't have the right shoes, and Oswald eyes a dishwasher's work shoes. And then Harvey finds Jim and says that Garrick, the owner of a weather balloon factory, has something for them. So Jim tells them about MCU's accusation, and Harvey assures him that nobody has anything connecting him to Oswald's death. He figures that Oswald got what he deserves, and so did Mario. But Jim refuses to drop the matter. He does not want to tell him that, hey, I didn't kill him. He's eventually going to tell him when he does. Harvey's probably going to be furious at him. But he refuses to drop the matter until they get the man who really killed the Waynes. So that night, Oswald approaches the dishwasher at the train station and confirms that their shoe sizes match and laughs, and I thought that was an interesting scene. So the owner, Jim Garrick, says that he recognized the balloon on the news and came down to report it. However, an ex-employee, Carl Smikers, stole the balloon a month ago, and Smikers never mentioned Dancer and stole 4 balloons. So Cranston finishes beating up a drug dealer in an alleyway, walks to the streets, A hot dog vendor offers him a hot dog, takes out a cuff, and Cranston knocks him down. He searches for the man, finds a piece of paper, and he's shocked at what it says. And Cranston asks who the man is, but the balloon man manages to cut off Cranston's leg, trigger the balloon in the cart, it pulls him into the air, and the balloon man ends up running off. So, the next day at the manor, Alfred finds Bruce reading the newspaper and refusing to eat, and he shows Alfred the story about the balloon man and his newest victim. And Alfred tells him that he needs to keep his strength up, and Bruce says that he's hungry and walks off. Keep in mind, they are taking this whole thing so seriously. And I'm not a fan of how they took this case so seriously. It's a fucking balloon man. Like, seriously. If I were to do this, if I were to use this case, I would not take this seriously at all. It's a balloon man. How seriously can you take a case of a guy tying people to balloons and putting them in midair? Like, that is, it sounds hilarious. It doesn't sound menacing at all. And I gotta say, the villain, not menacing at all. He was hilarious. So, the next morning, Barbara greets Jim as he prepares to leave for work. She wonders if Jim is in danger now that the balloon man is targeting cops. Yeah, he's just gonna get sucked up into midair. That's what's gonna happen. He explains that nobody cared when Danzer was killed, and now that's a cop everyone cares about. So James figures that everyone has to matter or people will lose faith, and then they get vigilantes. So Barbara assures her fiancé that he's giving people faith, pointing out that he caught the wing killer, and people think that he's a hero. Jim kisses her goodbye and walks out. And I thought that was a good scene overall because I do like Jim and Barbara. There is something huge we find out about Barbara, though, which I'm going to talk about definitely. I want to talk about it because it's definitely really interesting. So, at the station, Essen, Jim, and Harvey are watching a news piece on how the people of the city want the balloon man to do more. The captain wants them to bring in the cop killer and asks for reports. But Jim explains about Smikers, and Harvey figures that they'll get the man to talk if they find him, and his partner is not so sure, but admits that Smikers is probably connected to the killer. So detectives report that there are two balloons outside. There are still two balloons out there, and figures that the next target is public and corrupt. And Essen tells him to find Smikers and dismisses them. And outside, Jim points out that Harvey didn't care when Danzer was killed. Harvey says that a cop killer is just job safety issue and says that he knows how to find Smikers. Harvey starts talking with prostitutes, beating up. This was a really awesome scene. Harvey was just a badass in this scene. Beating up, thugs while Jim is watching. It was really fun to watch, definitely. Harvey's my least favorite character on this show, but he actually, that scene made me kind of like him more. Even though I feel, because the thing with this character, I feel he's a little out of place. He makes a lot of, funny things happen. He's very funny, but the thing is, no one else on the show is as funny as him, so here's the thing with his character, he's just very out of place to me. That's just my opinion. I feel he's really out of place. So then Oswald applies for his job, and the manager tells him to keep his mouth shut. Before Oswald can thank him, the owner Maroney comes up, and Oswald watches as the manager greets him. So he's pretty much, undercover still, trying to make it like he's not Oswald. So Harvey gets a lead, goes to Smikers' apartment. The woman answers the door, tells Smikers to run. Jim brings him down while the woman tosses Harvey around. Jim draws his gun and orders her to surrender. Once she puts her hands up, Harvey punches her unconscious, and she's unconscious. So then Laszlo talks to Fish, warning her that if Carmine finds out what she did, he'll come after her. And Fish thanks him for his concern, but tells him that Carmine wanted to hurt her by beating him. So once he leaves, Fish calls over one of her men and tells him to have Butch arrange an accident for Carmine's current girlfriend, Natalia. And she then tells the man to get rid of Laszlo because he's bringing down the mood. So I thought that was a very interesting scene. And then we go is probably my second favorite scene in the episode. I loved this twist. This is probably one of the best twists Gotham has done, in my opinion. I thought this twist was really well done, and I love this. I really love this. This really made me think, okay, this is definitely the best episode they've done so far. So Barbara comes down from her shower, finds Renee in her apartment, and Renee admits that she still has the apartment key and points out and I was like, why is Renee there? And she points out that Barbara's high, reminds her that she was there through all of it. And basically what we find out here is that Barbara and Renee had a bisexual relationship. Barbara's bisexual, and I thought that was a really good twist. Barbara's telling her to leave. Renee says that Jim killed Oswald on Carmine's orders, but Barbara doesn't believe her, and Renee admits that she lied to her when they were together. However, she points out that Barbara knew when she was lying. So Renee asks Barbara if to tell if she's lying now, and Barbara asks if Renee is going after Jim because he's her fiance, and the detective admits now that she can't make up for things she did when she was drunk. And I thought that was definitely a good scene. She still cares for Barbara and deserves better. She kisses Barbara, who tells her to leave. But before she goes, Renee tells Barbara to ask Jim where he was the night that Oswald died. So I thought that was a very good scene. And it made me like Barbara's character more. So far, all we've seen of Barbara is, oh, she's Jim's wife, and she doesn't really trust him. That's pretty much all we've really seen of Barbara. So I like that reveal. I thought that was a very good reveal in my opinion, and I thought that was really awesome, what's going on there. Because I don't know if she's still in this relationship with her or what's going on there. I think she kind of is, but I don't really know. So I like that reveal a lot, that they were in a bisexual relationship. I personally I didn't see that coming, but I thought that was very well done. So Harvey and Jim interrogate Smikers, who says that he stole the weather balloons to pay off his loan sharks. He never saw the face of the man he sold the balloons to, and when Harvey figures that Smikers has committed the perfect crime, Smikers explains that eventually the balloons will pop up in the upper atmosphere. And on the streets, a woman is walking a dog when Cranston's body falls down next to her. I thought that was a hilarious scene. Honestly, I thought it was funny. Yeah, so it falls down next to her, and later the police clean up the mess at James as Jim and Harvey arrive, and Jim confirms that Cardinal Quinn, a pedophile, was taken into his garden while meditating, and an officer hands over Cranston's trophy, which has Jim's name on it, and Jim realizes who the Balloonman is. So, at Maroni's restaurant, Maroni explains that one of his men, that the Arkham thing will prove that Carmine is losing it, and Oswald listens in, and he busts tables. Maroni notices him. When he listens, when he wonders if Oswald's Italian, Oswald claims he's on his mother's side, impressing Maroni. He tips him and says that he was a lot like Oswald, starting with nothing. And Maroni tells him that Gotham is a city of opportunity, and Oswald agrees and assures Maroni that he didn't hear anything. The news comes on with a report about Quinn and Maroni says that killing priests in public is not good. So at the station, Jim puts up a photo of Lamont, confirms that he didn't show up at work at his previous apartment. The paper on Cranston's body was the form that Jim signed for Kat the previous day, and Essen points out that her superiors are demanding answers. Jim assures her that they have Lamont's photo out and they'll come up with something. Harvey doesn't come up with anything from his contacts, and they figure that Lamont is using an abandoned building to store the carts and the balloons. Jim and Harvey then return to the old juvenile service building. And Jim earns that Lamont and Kat both mentioned the new building the day before. So Harvey figures that Lamont has left by now, but they notice an open gate and they go in. So the detectives find a van and the cart with the last weather balloon. So Lamont gets the drop on Harvey, says that Jim should be helping him. Jim insists that they have laws to protect the innocent, but Lamont points out that the laws don't apply to people like Cranston and Donzer, and he says he never made a difference with any children, and when the mayor rounded up the children, Lamont decided that he couldn't take any more. Lamont tells Jim to figure out who he is really fighting for, but Jim doesn't have an answer for him, which is interesting. I thought that was an interesting scene because he doesn't really know who he's fighting for. So Lamont's shooting at him. Harvey knocks the gun out of his hand, cuffs him to the last weather balloon before setting it free. And Jim grabs Lamont. They both float up. I'm sorry, I could not take this scene seriously, guys. I couldn't. It's a fucking balloon killer. And Harvey has no choice but to shoot the balloon. The two men fall down on the van, and Harvey glares at his partner. I just could not take that seriously at all. That was hilarious. So Carmine visits Fish at her club to make sure there were no hard feelings between them. She assures him that there isn't and asks about Natalia. And Carmine says that she was mugged. And he assures Fish that when they find the person responsible, anyone who helped him, they'll pay with their lives. And Carmine then asks if Fish has heard if Maroni is involved. And worried with Arkham on the horizon, it's no good time for things to get crazy. So Fish says that she thought Carmine had Arkham locked up, and he merely tells her to keep her eyes open. This really sets up for the next episode really well, because the next episode is called Arkham, so this sets up really well. The MTs take Lamont away. He tells Jim that there will be more vigilantes like him, and it's just hilarious that this was our first vigilante. I just find it hilarious. Jim promises that he will do his job, while Lamont says that they've had their chance. He asks Lamont who his last target was, and Bruce is watching a newscast about the Balloon Man's capture. The boy points out that the Balloon Man was a criminal because he killed people, and Alfred tells him to try and eat something, and I personally like the Bruce and Alfred scenes. I thought they were well done. And then I loved the last scene of this episode. Last scene of this episode makes me really excited for the next episode. Because Jim returns home, Barbara hugs him, relieved to see that he's okay. She asks him what's wrong, assuring Jim that he can't tell her anything. And Jim says that the city is sick in a way he hadn't realized, and that the Balloon Man said it didn't matter who his target was because they're all guilty. The city embraced him because they felt the same, and Jim insists that they can't have vigilantes. He admits there are cops that do the same thing. Barbara wonders if he ever would. Jim asks if she believes he could, and she says that she's sure he wouldn't because she knows him. There's a knock at the door. Barbara answers it, and it's Oswald. And Jim just looks at him, and he's like, "Oh, hello, Jim." And that's basically how it ends. And I thought that was an awesome ending, because now Jim is going to have to confess to everyone that Oswald is still alive. Oswald, I think, is probably going to interrogate him, going to make him tell the truth. I definitely feel that Oswald is going to try to make Jim tell the truth. Definitely we'll have to see what happens there. Overall, this episode, while I could not take the case seriously, I liked everything else that was going on in the episode. I liked the twist with Barbara. My question is, are Barbara and Renee still dating? Are they still dating behind Jim's back? I'm wondering if that's going on there. Is Jim going to confess that he did not kill Oswald? Because he pretty much has to now that Oswald's back in town. He needs to confess the truth. And how's Harvey going to react? I don't think Harvey's going to react in a good way at all, in my opinion. Fish and Carmine, I think this is interesting what happened there, what's happening between them. With Arkham, I'm looking forward to seeing what's going to happen with that in the next episode. Bruce, I like seeing the whole thing with Bruce trying to be a detective. What do you guys think of Bruce and Alfred? I think this was the first time I really liked his storyline. I didn't really like his storyline in the last 2 episodes, but I really liked his storyline in this episode, and I thought that was very well done. But again, I could not take the case seriously. I tried the best I could, but I could not take this case as seriously as I wanted to. What did you guys think of the Balloon Man case? I just could not take it seriously, in my opinion. Overall, I thought this episode was the best episode so far. I really enjoyed it. I'm really looking forward to next week's episode. Next week's episode looks badass. I can't wait for it. I think Jim is probably going to tell everyone that he didn't kill Oswald. And I think that's what we're building up to here. So that's it for my review. Hope you guys enjoyed it, and I'll see you guys in my next video, which will be my review for either Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. or Sons of Anarchy, one of those two. So I'll see you guys for that. Okay, bye.